Good evening, everyone, and I'm your host for today. My name is Sahil Kapoor. I work as Program Manager Partnerships and also leading the digital health initiatives for USAID's NISHTA program at Jhpiego India. Today, we have an eminent speaker with us, and Dr. Anil Koul, and he is currently the Vice President, Head of Discovery Research at Global Public Health Unit of Janssen Pharmaceuticals. Uh, to give a brief introduction of him, he also served as Director of Institute of Microbial Technology under the Government of India from 2017 to 19. At J&J, his breakthrough was in the role in the discovery and research and development of Bericillin, which is the first drug to be approved in the last 45 years for the treatment of drug-resistant TB. And currently, this drug is approved, conditionally approved in over 64 countries and reached more than 200,000 TB patients. For this discovery of Bericillin and the TB research, in 2017, he was awarded as the Sun Pharma Research Award, and also the Swiss TB Prize by Society of Pneumology. And this year, in 2020, he was the recipient of American Chemical Society Heroes of Chemistry Award. He is also appointed as adjunct professor of translation research at London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, and currently he serves as a board of directors at Janssen Pharmaceuticals, as well as serves on the scientific advisory board of CSR India. Dr. Kaul, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Sahilji. Thank you very much for having me.
So, viewers, today our discussion of topic we will be discussing on the how innovations and solutions are paving their way in the healthcare system and how they are revamping the public healthcare system. With this, I'll start with my first question to Dr. Kaul. Doctor, how is innovation being fostered and promoted in the Indian ecosystem nowadays, and how are we doing there?
I think Indian ecosystem in terms of the innovation, we are doing very good, because if you look at the global innovation index, which is done by different very credible organizations across the world, we stand at number 47 in 2020 rankings. While if you look at 5 years ago, in 2015, we were at 87. So we are slowly increasing our innovation parameters, our innovation focus, and also our international rankings in regards to the innovation within the country. We still have a long stretch in terms of reaching the top 10 best innovative nations in the world, while Switzerland has been on the top spot for last 5-6 years. But I think India has steadily progressed in terms of the innovation in the last couple of years. So we are doing very good. At the same time, I think if we consider China, which was also not the top innovators in the world. Now, China last year or a few years ago has entered at least top 10, 20 best innovative countries in the world. And there are several other Asian countries, including South Korea, Vietnam, Malaysia, who are doing also very good in the innovation rankings. So overall, I think the ecosystem in India is building up for the innovation. And this is basically getting reflected in the global rankings, what India is able to achieve.
Good to hear, sir. And since we talked about talking about the ranking of India, in your view, what are the new technological advancements that are taking place in public health arena, and especially if we talk about the antimicrobial resistance issue nowadays?
I think if you look at AMR is a big, huge challenge what we have. AMR across the globe, not only in India, but across the globe. So from the AMR perspective, I personally believe that it will assume another big public health threat, or it is currently a big public health threat, not in the world actually. And if you look by some of the data which has been shown, by 2050, we will be losing almost 10 million people to AMR, or the antibiotic resistant bacteria. And this has a big impact on the world economy. Like the projections are that we will be losing by 2050 almost $66 trillion in terms of the economic value. So AMR is a big challenge for global public health systems. And within the AMR also now, we know that the governments are trying their best to control, have proper infection controls in the hospitals and the elderly homes and things like that. But we still see emergence of the new bacterial strains, like we have seen Candida auris, a fungal strain, which is emerging in India as well as in several other countries. And same thing, we have seen drug-resistant Neisseria, gonorrhea, which is emerging out. And then we have drug-resistant Enterobacteriaceae. A lot of issues in terms of these highly drug-resistant pathogens which are emerging. And at the same time, we have no drugs against what we call multi-drug resistant Acinetobacter baumannii and Pseudomonas aeruginosa, which are very intrinsically highly resistant to antibiotics. So AMR, I believe, is the next major global challenge after the COVID. Hopefully, we are able to tackle that. And within the AMR also, the TB is multi-drug resistant tuberculosis, or XDR tuberculosis, constitute actually 1/3 or 1/4 of all the AMR cases globally. So as we know that India is a big challenge in terms of controlling the TB, emergence of MDR and XDR, but the government of India is very, very keen in pushing what we call NTB program robustly, and there are timelines, like there's the NTB 2025 timeline which the government has defined, so that we will be able to eradicate TB from India. That will be one of the biggest success stories of the world.
So since we talked about the TB, and since you have also did a lot of research in the TB and have been a torchbearer with the drug medically, according to you, since government is focusing on eradicating TB by 2025, so how the COVID has impacted these TB-specific public health programs in India, and how you think we are on time in achieving our goal, or how that will be taken forward now?
I think we don't have India-specific data, but we know globally there are some publications from WHO or from other research groups across the world that TB is basically impacted by the COVID because of the detection, and also the access to the drugs has been limited in number of countries because these are nationally run programs, and the patients didn't have either the diagnostics or the access to the medications. So the global estimates are that we will be having at least around 500,000, around 400,000 to 500,000 more deaths because of the COVID impact on TB. So this is a big setback, and the projection is that if 2018 numbers, if we look at them, we had almost 1.5 million people dying of TB. Now people are projecting in 2020 we will be having around 1.9 million people dying of TB. So there is a substantial increase in the number of people who will be eventually dying of TB, and this is partly also driven by the COVID disruption in the healthcare facilities across the world.
I see. And sir, going forward, like since we talked about AMR and we talked about TB, in the COVID, How view which are the new technological advancements, specific advancements being taking place nowadays with new technologies coming in. So how this is helping the public health systems in coping up with these pandemic and the disease even. And if you can elaborate some of the examples would be good.
I think, Sahil, if you look, there have been amazing progress in the healthcare and science and technology in general, but I will be speaking mostly in healthcare and medicine. So if you look at how the world has shaped in the last 10 years, we never realized that the pace of the change, the pace of the innovation, the pace of embracing new technologies will be so dramatic that it's unthinkable 10 years ago what we could do in the life sciences and what we are able to do now. I think there are few examples I can give. There are several of them which we can think about how the technological revolution in the life sciences is taking place. And one of the things which is of great interest to me is the neurodegenerative diseases. Personally, I feel very fascinated by how our brain works, how our cognition works, how we store the memory, and things like that. But there was a fantastic paper in Nature this year where they showed the activity, neuronal activity, or the brain activity uh, in in uh, in in pig's brain uh, after the post-mortem. So that means once the pigs had died, but we still could see the activity, what we call synchronized activity of the neuronal cells of these isolated brains. So which was unthinkable, because we thought that the brain cells die immediately the moment the moment death happens. But now, upon preservation and upon oxygen supplementation, we see how these neuronal cells have what we call still synchronized circuitry, electrical circuitry, uh, which is amazing, and this defines new paradigms in terms of how we understand consciousness, what ethics means in terms of mortality. So there's a lot of bioethics debate around it, but this is a new paradigm in terms of understanding several other aspects of the neuroscience, which will be defined in the next 10 years as we embrace more of the artificial intelligence tools and big data tools. But beyond that, I think if you look also at the gene editing technologies,
Yeah.
the gene editing technologies are basically revolutionizing what we call disease paradigms. And the disease which we thought at one time we can never be able to tackle, we are being tackled with these gene editing technologies. The CRISPR-Cas, for that matter, has been shown recently and by one of the Chinese scientists that they could re-engineer some of the cells, the human cells, and make a particular patient HIV resistant. So this was unthinkable a few years ago. And the same thing with the gene therapy approaches, the gene therapy for retinal diseases, the gene therapy for other rare diseases are transforming what we call the human health. So there is a fundamental change in the technologies, in the technological space, and this is also driven by the AI, the advent of AI, the advent of machine learning, the advent of neural analysis. That is not only driving what we call new drug discovery approaches or chem informatic approaches, but that's also driving what we call our understanding of very complex biological systems. So I can give you an example here is the microbiome, human microbiome. So we all have a huge almost 1 trillion, maybe more than 1 trillion cells in our gut itself. We have more microbial cells than we have basically the cells in our body. So, and these are different bacterial species which are basically present in our stomach and the intestine, lower and large intestines. And people have shown their association in Parkinson's, people have shown their association in diabetes, and how this microbiome impacts the entire health. Now, what people, we couldn't, because the systems are so complex, the data is so huge, the amount of bacteria are so big, and the metabolites which they produce are so complex in nature. It was very difficult to understand it. But the advancement in genomic technologies, the advancement in the AI and the machine learning tools to understand these complex microbial systems within our bodies, this will drive a lot of new approaches in treatment of a lot of these non-communicable diseases, and also may help us to identify metabolites which may help in diabetes, which may help in Alzheimer's, which may help in Parkinson's. So we are really at the cusp of what we call revolution in the medical and life sciences. And yeah, these are just few examples. I know it's a very long answer to your question, but I can really elaborate on it, but because I feel very fascinated by evolution of science and tech in the life sciences area, which we are seeing right now.
Yeah, very rightly said, Dr. Paul. I think the technologies like artificial intelligence and subset of machine learning tools and all are actually changing the whole paradigm if you talk about genomics or drug discovery or even the diagnosis nowadays. So, I mean, very rightly said on that. Because coming to the next one, since when we talk about the technology section and the innovation, a lot of startups are emerging nowadays in the healthcare arena, and every day we are able to see something new which is coming on the ground, and people are trying and piloting and testing out all of these innovations, and they're trying to collaborate with government. So especially if we talk about the Indian government, Indian healthcare system, how is the public-private partnerships being taken into consideration? Do you think, in your view, the current policies are conducive for the investments in the public health systems? How are these startups and how are these innovation which are taken care by startups are actually heading towards the partnership with the government?
I think as I said, that the Indian ecosystem, the Indian R&D, I have been very intimately associated with it for last several years. I can tell you that we produce almost 7 lakh graduates per year. We produced a sizable number of scientists every year, PhDs, and if you look at the Indian R&D spend, we have around 0.9% of the GDP is spent on the R&D. As compared to the other countries, we are on the lower side, but I think, as has been stated by government several times, that this R&D spend in innovation will increase. But what is key, what is more important, is the private investment in the R&D. If you look at across the globe in the major economies, the major investment in science and tech is through businesses. You take example of Korea, you take example of Japan, example of Israel. The government spent on R&D is very limited, while it's less than 20%, while 80% of spend is from the private industry. While in India, it's the reverse. The government is spending a lot on the science and tech. The industry is in the industry participation is less. So the key question is that how do we get more and more private sector participation in R&D activities, which of course are risky in nature, have long incubation time, need more evolution evolution in terms of time and space for these technologies to emerge. But we have the right ecosystem in India. We have one of the amazing public health institutions, public R&D institutions, and technology institutions available in India. And the government has basically incentivized what we call the startup culture.
Yeah.
India ranks second in the world in terms of the number of the startups. And some of them have been successful. Some of them have successfully monetized the ideas which they were built on. So we have the second highest internet connectivity, internet usage across the world. So from that perspective, I think we will see evolution of more and more startups, and COVID has demonstrated that, and that in order to face a global challenge, number of startups across the world have increased basically in the healthcare sector. And the same thing is in India. India being in the forefront of the digital technologies, the embracing of AI in the health tech will be very helpful to the nation. And digitalization of the science, digitalization of your clinical trial, patient records, and things like that are very, very critical. And that's what's going to happen. So from my perspective, I think we as a nation will be fostering more public-private partnerships, and which basically, if you look at NITI Aayog policies, they have been fostering more and more public and private partnerships, the CSR, the DBT, engagement in the vaccine front. COVID vaccine front is a very clear demonstration about how the government is trying to work with the private industries in terms of fostering public-private partnerships. And India being the second largest, basically the biggest vaccine producer in the world, we supply I think around 40% or 50% of the global vaccines, and this is also driven right now by a very nice partnership between the government as well as the private industry in terms of uh, in terms of uh, uh, in terms of all the technologies in the healthcare. And this is also driven by the fact that we have the government is pushing for innovation at the school level. If you look at the Atal Tinkering Labs initiative, if you look at one of the CSIR's initiative, which is Jigyasa, to get people, students enrolled in the major national labs. So there are a lot of initiatives which the government is trying to take to help participation of the private industry. And I personally believe for the global public health, unless government participates with the private industry, or the private industry participates with the government, we will never be able to address major global health challenges. COVID has shown us perfectly how we need to build those partnerships. And we need to build on the COVID example to eradicate other major challenges. Sahil, you know yourself, you are from the field of public health, so you know it very well how public-private partnerships very much are effective in diseases like TB, in diseases like HIV, in future pandemic preparedness initiative for tropical disease like dengue, for example.
I do agree. In fact, India has opened up and created editing across states, proving what they have done. That's how the whole system is changing now. So, lastly, sir, before closing the session, any specific messages for the India's next generation scientists and the public health professionals from your side?
I think, as I said, that we need to invest more in the digital health, particularly in the public health space, because the amount of data which is available in India is immense. It has a great, huge value, and India being the pharmacy of the world India being the IT service provider for the rest of the world. So if we can mix these two sectors together and let them co-incubate and co-incubate with each other's ideas, I think this will give us space for more therapies for telemedicine, more approaches for addressing our rural healthcare challenges. So there's a lot we can do from the public health space, or more diagnostics for disease like TB, for that matter. So more digitalization of the TB healthcare or patient records, more AI-driven approaches for understanding and making TB diagnostic faster. So there is a lot what we can do in terms of understanding our strengths, basically as a nation, understanding our human resource pool as a nation, understanding our scientific core strengths, and also defining our healthcare and policy challenges. I think the moment we have done those things, I definitely feel that it's an amazing next 5 years for the nation. I really feel bullish about the science and tech evolution in the country.
Great, sir. And thank you for being on this session organized by Voice of Healthcare. And it was a pleasure discussing with you on this topic.
Thank you, Sahil. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.